If I was a beginner starting keto, this is what it would look like now, based on things that we've learned over the last 10 or 15 years of really heavy ketogenic and ketone research. So I'm going to jump right into it. The first thing that I would do differently now compared to what I did 10 years ago, I would really change my sweetener strategy up. I would really try to limit my sweeteners, because now the evidence is just kind of suggesting that maybe sweeteners could be influencing insulin more than we thought. And we're just seeing more and more evidence supporting that, even though it might be smaller. Because for me, when I lost a lot of weight with the ketogenic diet, it was really because I was controlling my insulin levels and getting my insulin resistance under control. And in this particular case, I think it's really important to monitor that. So if I was going to use sweeteners, I would probably lean towards allulose more now. And I would lean towards pure monk fruit, like a liquid monk fruit that doesn't have erythritol added into it. I'm not opposed to erythritol. Okay, I've done videos talking about how those anti-erythritol studies that came out were totally bunk and just messed up. But one thing that is certain is I don't always feel 100% mentally right when I have erythritol. I get a little foggy. Something is going on there. I don't think it's as nefarious as some people make it out to be, but a lot of keto foods had tons of erythritol in it. So I would make a move for allulose, monk fruit, and realistically just less sweetener in general. Quick reminder, videos every day on this channel. Hit that subscribe button and please drop a comment for the algorithm. YouTube just wants me to be a trendy youngin and have a bunch of engagement on this video. So I used to appeal to people that were very educated and didn't care about leaving comments, but apparently YouTube likes it. So drop a comment for the algo. The second thing that I would do, and this is kind of a no-brainer, but I think back about when I first lost a rapid amount of weight with keto and what I was eating then compared to how it evolved with more products coming out. I would really push for a whole food approach. I would really eat as close to the earth as possible with limited baked things, limited other things. Protein powders are fine. Those things have always been around. And I used those a lot when I was first doing keto. But man, as more keto products came out, it was just easier to kind of be on that slippery slope. And I think those things are fine to have in moderation. But if I was going to start it over again, I'd be getting back to the grassroots of what really worked for me. Because when I started in 2010-ish, there weren't all those good things around. It was real foods. It was eggs. It was beef. It was cheese. It was heavy cream. It was butter. It was olive oil. It was veggies. It was the basics, really. The third thing that I would do if I was starting a ketogenic diet right now is I would still eat a lot of veggies, but I would be much more aware of my oxalate intake. And I'm aware that that makes me sound like just a fear-mongering idiot. But guys, the oxalate thing is real. I had Dr. Jacob Torres on my channel, who is a very well-established researcher at UC Santa Barbara and really well-respected. And he was talking to me about hey, oxalates are a real problem. It's a real thing. Our body doesn't clear them. And the amount of spinach and oxalate-rich veggies I was consuming on keto, I wonder if that was contributing to some of the joint pain and stuff I was having. Because when those got out of my diet, things got better. And I would be eating more things like bok choy. I'd be eating more things like, believe it or not, steamed kale. I'd eat up turnip greens, cauliflower, broccoli, more things like that, and less in the way of spinach and high oxalate veggies. So you could do a quick Google search for high oxalate veggies and what you may want to just kind of monitor a little bit more. But I am a very pro vegetable person on keto. I think they're great for satiety. I think we need that micronutrition. But boy, was I a little overdoing it on the oxalates and kind of just turning a deaf ear to the oxalate research. So I would just be very careful about the types of greens I take in now. Number 4, protein would be the focus. Now that was kind of a big thing for me anyway in the last few years, but even more so now. I would just keep the carbs as low as possible and then not worry about how much protein I take in, even if it means I'm taking in what would be considered too much. The protein was everything. And now the evidence is so strong. A study published in Obesity is really wild. Basically, it took a look at people that consumed equal amounts of calories, but those that consumed more protein lost more fat and had significantly less food intake. So we know from a GLP-1 receptor agonist research, with that protein has a similar effect. Well, not similar, not as strong, but it influences GLP-1. So I would just be pounding the protein because I know that appetite suppression is the biggest thing with keto. The ketones modulate your appetite. And that's a huge thing. So I'm gonna drive that up as much as I can. So that means whey protein powder, that means cottage cheese, that means some plant-based protein powders. I use it all. I use one particular protein powder that I really like, especially when I'm doing low carb. It's SunWarrior's Active line. It might have been a while since you've heard me talk about this one in this context. The thing I like about it is because it has a high enough pumpkin seed protein content, but also has fiber, also has enzymes. It has like a full spectrum, almost a whole food approach. So the satiety from it is insane. I feel like if I have that in the morning, my appetite is under control for like hours. And if you're someone that doesn't want to just have the plant-based protein aspect, I have actually mixed it with whey protein too. So you can do that. But on its own, it is a tremendous appetite suppressant and really well formulated. I'm not anti-plant-based. I consume things that are really rich in plants too, along with my omnivorous diet in general. So that link down below is a 20% off discount link. Definitely recommend you give it a shot if you're doing keto this year. So that link down below, that's 20% off in the top line of the description. Number 5, I wouldn't be as concerned with beta hydroxybutyrate supplements with exogenous ketones. I actually did a few like even kind of hit pieces on those when I was really deep in my keto days. Like, why would you want to give yourself exogenous ketones? Wouldn't that blunt your endogenous production? And there's some evidence that suggests it might. But I think now that having higher ketone levels would be actually beneficial because the evidence is so strong that so much of the effect of a ketogenic diet is the influence of ketones on cells. Histone deacetylase inhibition, the antioxidant aspects, all these things. The ketones are protective, and I think adding them into the mix occasionally is really good. I prefer to use a ketone ester generally, like a ketone monoester, like the Delta G brand is good. I'll also, anyway, exogenous ketones in general, I don't think are problematic. Just, I would not recommend going with a ketone that is a 1,3-butane-diol. I'm not gonna say the brand name, so I don't wanna call anyone out, but look at the ingredients, and if it's 1,3-butane-diol, that essentially is just converting into an alcohol. It is not driving ketone values up like a diester, a monoester, or a ketone salt, period. Number 6, I would have a lot more creatine. I just would. I did not do enough creatine because I was afraid of water weight. And now I realize that, wow, the evidence on creatine for even short-term energy, but most importantly, what really threw me off about the ketogenic diet is when I would work out for longer intensities or anything, I would deal with muscle cramps. Similar to Paul Saladino. Like, that's why he quit keto, right? Because he was dealing with these cramps with carnivore. That's a real thing, but creatine seems to help that with me. The hydration that I get intracellularly into the muscle ends up being much less of an issue. So I am now, if I was going to be starting keto right now fresh, I would minimum add in 5 grams, probably 10 grams of creatine per day. Number 7, I would also use more taurine. Taurine has helped me a lot with the cramping. And I've realized that if I'm sensitive to the cramps on keto, like maybe you are, a little bit of taurine, like a couple thousand milligrams of taurine, like 2 grams of taurine prior to activity, big difference. And I've noticed that on low carb fasting or non-low carb, it works all around. Number 8, if I was trying to lose fat with keto, I would do occasional low fat days. Now I've talked about this for a while, but it was something that I really only adopted the last few years that I was doing keto. So I'd want to go really, moderately high fat, very high protein, but occasionally have days where I do protein sparing modified fasting, where I just go high protein, low fat, and obviously low carb. This is a major shot in the arm. It gives you a major kick in the pants when it comes down to fat loss because you're dropping calories but keeping protein so high. If your protein's high, you're not going to lose muscle, but you will still slow down your metabolic rate. So you want to do it kind of like random points in time, no real structure to it. Just like, hey, today I'm going to go really low fat. It's going to be a low calorie day because it's going to be low fat, low carb, but high protein. Just because it's low fat doesn't mean it's bad. You're not doing it all the time. Number 9, less bulletproof coffee. No knock on Dave Asprey, no problem with him. But when you liquefy butter, you're changing it and it has to bind to a chylomicron to absorb. It's not doctor, but Mike Mutzel and I have talked about this. And we both have seen changes in our triglycerides when we are having bulletproof coffee with the liquefied butter. I don't think it's so much of a calorie thing. It's just a rampant kind of ingestion of fats that are happening at a really high rate in a saturated form that you've liquefied so they absorb differently. But the evidence with MCT oil is really strong on appetite suppression. So I would revamp how I did my bulletproof coffee and I would just do coffee, maybe a little bit of heavy cream, just a splash, and MCT oil, because MCT oil will drive up those ketones and curb the appetite. So that kind of brings me to number 10. I would use MCT oil a lot more. I really stopped using it because I was like, oh, this is too supplementy. But now I'm seeing like how powerful it is. Absorbs right into the portal vein, drives ketone values up, and actually can stimulate GLP-1 response. So we're seeing more with the evidence on GLP-1 that MCT might be powerful as an appetite suppressant. So I would use it and lean into it more than I was before. Number 11, I'd have more dairy. Okay, I got away from dairy because I thought dairy was being problematic. I was like, oh, I'm getting circles under my eyes. The circles under my eyes were just from lack of sleep from having kids. Okay, it wasn't the dairy. I can almost assure you that. But what I would do is I would switch my dairy to hard aged cheeses. I would have more hard, sharp cheddar. I would have more Parmesan, Pecorino Romano. I would have these things, and I would make sure that the cheese that I'm getting, whenever I can, is A2 variety. Okay, better quality beta casein, A2 variety. So I would want to look for dairy sources that were A2. I'd want to go with the raw cheeses that were aged for a long time to break down some of those proteins. Within that same vein, I would want more monounsaturated fats. So more olive oil, some more dairy fat that's going to have monounsaturated. I just lean into that, a little less in other things, which I'll talk about in a minute. Number 12, I would add a multivitamin in. And I would add like an organic, like real, like regenerative type multivitamin. I wouldn't add something that's just ascorbic acid type vitamin C. I want like a whole food one. I'm really trying to round out my nutritional value there, right? Or my nutritional intake, because the problem is with keto, sometimes you end up in these micro deficiencies. And that's not what we're after. We're not trying to restrict nutrients. We're trying to just restrict one macronutrient and get all the other nutrition that we need. So I would probably add a multivitamin, which I didn't start doing until the end of my keto journey, which I shouldn't even say the end because I still do it from time to time. But point is that I would have added more of that in, and I would definitely do that now. Number 13, I'd eat less nuts. I still like the macadamia nuts. I still love those. I was so pro macadamia nut that it was getting to a point where I would eat so many that it was like physically too much on my body to handle. Like the actual like structure, if I didn't chew them all the way, I was getting torn up inside. Nuts just add up in calories, and that's the biggest thing. And most of the time, with the exception of like macadamia nuts and pili nuts and sacha inchi seeds, you're really ending up with just a ton of polyunsaturated fats that are not that bad, but when you have them along with the fact that like they are going to be the majority of your fat intake, that's when it's a problem. So I would really restrict how much I just would go willy-nilly on the nuts. I would just have maybe a handful of macadamia nuts a day, call it a day. And when I say handful, I mean like an ounce or two. Number 14, I would have keto cheat days. So what I was finding is that it was a slippery slope with like different keto treats and stuff. What I would do now is I would give myself like 1 or 2 days out of the week where I allow myself to have those keto treats, and I call them keto cheat days. Because realistically, the carbs just have to almost be dead to you. You almost have to just be like, you know what? I'm gonna commit for at least a few months, right? And that means you still need some like emotional relief now and then, which means maybe have those days being keto cheat days where you go get, I don't know, like make a keto treat or go to In-N-Out and get a double without a bun, animal style, right? Like it's just have some fun with that, but maybe don't go off the rails. Number 15, if I was to add carbs in, they would be intra-workout. For years, I was a proponent of what I called targeted ketogenic, which was where you would time your carbohydrate intake post-workout to carb backload, or even pre-workout to front load and burn it off. Now, the evidence is so strong on the insulin-independent glucose uptake that I would actually just have like 30 or 40 grams of carbohydrates during my actual workout, where I could absorb those carbs as glycogen without actually spiking insulin, because it would actually get taken up via GLUT4 without insulin. This is huge. And if I had known this earlier on, I probably could have like kept a little more strength. Not that I lost my strength, but I think I would have had a little more anaerobic performance and explosiveness. Because that's one thing I did lose with keto was explosive power. I didn't lose strength and like my volume was still fine, but explosiveness I lost. And when I added like some carbs intra-workout, that explosiveness came back. So I wouldn't really have the carbs timed any specific way other than just intra-workout if it's a day where I'm trying to be explosive and build. If I'm trying to lose fat, I still wouldn't even have the carbs intra-workout. Number 16, finally, I would fast a little less. Keto makes it so easy to fast that I was finding myself fasting too much. So what I would suggest now is if you want to throw fasting into the mix, that might be something that you do when you're a little less low carb. And maybe on keto, you just kind of keep it a normal theme of just maybe fasting a couple days per week and not intermittent fasting every day along with keto. That's just a lot of oxidative stress and just AMPK activation, like so much mTOR suppression, it might even hurt your recovery. So it's like keep calories decently high and then maybe 2 days a week or so intermittent fast for 18 hours alongside keto. And that's really what I would change now and what I would do if I was starting up, knowing what I know now. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.